right. So back in Simio again, I'm going to show you about the results tab. So the results tab is where you're going to find the output from whatever model that you've built within your facility view. So let's fast forward this model to run its 12 hours of simulation. Okay, we fast forwarded it. Entities were generated and they went through the fast food line with 2 servers. Now let's click on the results. Okay, so what you see here, the first view is this pivot grid. This pivot grid has multiple fields here with a top level object type sorting. So model entities and all the relevant statistics, the servers and all their relevant statistics, as well as the sinks and the sources. So let's look at what information is actually contained within here. So if I minimize this, we can see that for model entity, the average time and system in hours is something really small. Let's change the unit settings so that this makes more sense. The unit settings are here. If I go to minutes, okay, so that's better, I guess. Still fractions of minutes, but you can see that for time and system, model entities at most, out of all the 7,000 model entities, there were there was one at least that took a minute and change in the system, and then some of them took no time at all, or at least one observation took no time at all. Here's some other fields that are important. So things like in the server, you have the utilization, right? So the utilization of the resource is right here. That is in the queuing system world, that's thinking about how much time of the total time of the 12 hours were spent occupied. And it looks like about half of the day total were occupied if you add up all the amount of time that the server had somebody in the processing block. You can also see some statistics about the resource itself, like how much time was spent processing on average, and things of that nature. So now let's go down. We're still within the server, the input buffer. This is where you can get a sense of how many people are in the queue on average. So on average, the queue length was 0.33. But there whereas at least one instance of 9 people waiting at a time, just based on random chance. There's also some statistics on the average holding time, meaning the amount of time that was spent in the queue, and some other statistics following here. Okay, so let's look at the sink and the source. Right here, you can see that these are not that interesting, but they do tell you in terms of the number of entities that were created, right? At the source, you can say, hey, there were a total number of 7,172 customers that left the source output buffer. And then for the sink, all of those made it through to the end of the sink, the end of the simulation by the end of it. So this uh, results tab in the pivot grid is useful for investigating kind of your basic model performance. So if I were to go back to the facility view, I might make some adjustments and then run it again and see how that affects the results as a way to build the model and make some adjustments. There's some other options within here. Some of them are a little bit more in depth than what we might use for simple queuing models or inventory systems. One of them that could be useful is the reports tab. So if I click reports, it is going to give me the information from my simulation run, but just in a slightly different format. And this can be useful for exporting to provide as like an appendix to a document. But you can see that it breaks it up slightly differently. It'll talk about the objects and the number that were created, and then it will break up uh, the statistics by the different stations where they're at, average values, maximum values, minimum values, and whatnot. Just a different way to look at the results that could be useful. Okay, so now that we've looked at the results tab, I hope that you have a better understanding of when I run my model and I look at the information either in the pivot grid or the reports, I can see some of the key statistics about the performance of my system. All right, good luck and happy modeling.